Hello again and welcome to episode 2 in this video series, The 7 Biggest Mistakes Parents Make and How to Stop Making Them. In this segment, I'm going to talk about giving explanations to children and as a result, getting into frequent and completely unproductive arguments. Today's typical parent believes the problems they're having with a child are originating from within the child, that there's something about the child himself that causes the problem in question. My child is argumentative is one such complaint. The fact is, are you paying attention? Because this may blow your mind. There is no such thing as an argumentative child. That's right. There is no argumentative gene. There is no argumentative brain structure. There is no argumentative biochemical. Children do not cause arguments to take place between themselves and their parents. Children simply seize upon opportunities presented by their parents to initiate and participate in arguments. They seize upon these opportunities because children are by nature rebellious. They do not submit to authority willingly or naturally. You see that being acted out in the behavior of toddlers, the "you're not the boss of me, you can't tell me what to do" syndrome. So, because children are rebellious by nature, they seize upon opportunities presented by their parents to engage in arguments because they know that if they can get their parents to participate in these non-productive verbal wrestling matches, they stand a fair to middling chance of winning these arguments and in so doing prove once again that no one can tell them what to do. These so-called argumentative children are throwing dice in effect. They know they don't always win, but like a compulsive gambler, they're willing to take the chance on any given occasion. In fact, if they only win on average 1 out of 10 times, they're going to continue taking the risk. That describes a compulsive gambler, by the way. He only has to win 1 out of every 10 times to keep right on losing his money. Likewise, given the opportunity, and the opportunity to argue is always given by the parent, any child will be argumentative. If you, a parent, claim to have one of these supposedly argumentative kids, it's time for you to accept that the problem is you, not your child. As long as you continue to think that the arguments are being produced by your child, that they represent some inborn characteristic of his, you will try to stop the arguments by doing something to him. You will attempt to outwit him, or punishment, or yell at him, threaten him, but he's not causing the arguments, you are. That's why doing something to him hasn't stopped them from happening and won't. Furthermore, trying to solve the problem by doing something to him has made things worse. In fact, hasn't it? You've already discovered that. You've just failed to accept the evidence. When you accept that these arguments taking place between you and your child are your doing and yours alone, you'll be able to end them forever in, get this, one day. That's right, one day. Now, that may sound like some outrageous claim, but it's really not. The fact is, getting into arguments with your child is a very, very easy problem to fix. You've failed to fix it thus far simply because you've been trying to fix the wrong person. Said another way, you've been barking up the wrong tree. Arguments between parents and children occur for 2 reasons, both involving parent behavior. First, parents doctor up instructions with explanations. And second, when children disagree, parents try to talk them into agreeing. So let's take a closer look at those one at a time. Let's say a mother wants her 5-year-old son to pick up the toys he's playing with in the living room and move them somewhere else in the house. Her friend, whom she hasn't seen in some time, is coming over and she wants to serve coffee and pastries in the living room and enjoy a pleasant, distraction-free conversation. So that's exactly what she tells her son, age 5. First, she bends over into what is clearly a submissive, pleading position. She does that because she read somewhere that when speaking to a child, an adult should get down to the child's level. And then she says something like this: "Sweetie, honey, my friend Mrs. Wilson, you know her, is coming over and we haven't seen one another in a while. And I'd like to use this room to talk with her and serve her coffee and pastries, and it would really help me out if you would move your toys to another room. Would you do that for Mommy, okay?" Now, did you catch that? This mother explains why she wants the toys moved. She explains herself. She does so because she has read in numerous parenting books and magazine articles that children have a right. That's the word most often used. They have a supposed right to know the reasons behind parental decisions and instructions. The authors of said books and articles maintain that this supposed right, which oddly enough didn't exist when I was a child, is essential to a child feeling respected by his or her parents, developing high self-esteem, feeling affirmed as an individual, and other blah, 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 blah babble. Come to think of it, the notion that children need to feel respected by their parents is another odd new idea. I never felt respected by my parents, and that would also be the testimony of probably 98% of folks in my ancient age group. I felt loved, cared for, adequately provided for, and adequately protected, but I really didn't think they respected me. My thesaurus gives the following synonyms for the word respect: admiration, high opinion, reverence, look up to, and deference. No, my parents definitely did not respect me. Quite the contrary, the respect went in the other direction. I respected them. I respected them for being hardworking people who took good care of me, loved me in spite of my all too frequent episodes of badness, and obviously and in every way had my best interests in mind, although I didn't always appreciate that. What has a child done to deserve respect from adults, parents or otherwise, to have them admire, revere, and look up to him? Absolutely nothing. He is a dependent. He does not, and in all likelihood cannot, support himself. Absent his parents' provision and protection, he would fall prey to all manner of harm. He might not even be able to keep himself alive. To put it bluntly, no, children do not deserve to be respected. They deserve to be loved unconditionally and provided with reliable authority. They deserve to be well taken care of. That's about all they deserve, certainly not respect. Anyway, as a result of children having the supposed right to know the why or why not behind parental decisions and instructions, today's parents explain themselves. These explanations almost always sound pleading. Sometimes they even sound like the parent is begging. Before we go any further, let's get something straight. When you give an explanation concerning an instruction or decision that you have made, you're implying that you need to justify yourself and your authority to your child. Now, hear me clearly. Your authority over your child is legitimate. It does not need to be justified. The biblical view on this is that God has assigned you this authority. But putting the Bible aside for the moment, you brought your child into the world. You support him. His very life depends upon you. You are willing to give your life to save his, and by the way, he's not willing to give his to save yours. You are willing to give your child the last seat in the lifeboat, and actually, he was hoping you would. Because you are the one and only person in the parent-child relationship who is willing to make the supreme sacrifice, you are the morally superior person in the relationship. That is not an arguable proposition, and for that simple, commonsensical reason, you do not need to justify your authority by giving explanations and reasons to your child. Period. Ta-da! That indisputable truth by itself justifies the cost of this video seminar. Now here's a fact. No matter the parent's tone of voice, explanations invite pushback, which children are hardwired to do when they sense that an adult lacks confidence in the legitimacy of his or her authority. When parents explain themselves, children push back against those explanations. Almost invariably, the pushback, the challenge, begins with a high-pitched, "Why?" or "Why not?" Don't be fooled. Those are not requests for information. They are challenges to your authority. These challenges, which parents interpret as evidence of a child's argumentative nature, are simply the child's knee-jerk response to an instruction from a parent that is doctored up with an explanation. The parent in question, instead of simply telling the child what to do, explains to the child why she wants him to do it. Going back to the mother I described a moment ago, who explained that she wanted her child to move his toys from the living room to another area of the house because her girlfriend, whom she hadn't seen for a while, was coming over and she wanted to have a distraction-free conversation with her in the living room. The child responds to his mother's pleading request that he move his toys to another area of the house by complaining, "I was here first. I've got all my toys set up just the way I want them. And besides, you don't let me in here and you should have to follow the same rules." And he ends his pushback by telling his mother, no, he's not going to move. He's not going to move. And that's that. To her friends, the mother describes her son as argumentative. But the fact is that the problem is one she has created and recreates over and over again by explaining herself to him. Remember, she thinks these explanations are required, that they represent good parenting and are a sign of respect for her child. The problem is her good intentions are creating a monster. Without exception, explanations sound persuasive as opposed to authoritative. That's why effective leaders rarely explain themselves. They direct, inform, command, and they do so with authoritative language, which I call alpha speech. Politicians use persuasive language, which is why effective politicians rarely make effective leaders and vice versa. And by the way, you may have noticed that this mother's pleading tone is matched by her pleading posture. Remember, she gets down to her child's level. She read a book or magazine article in which some experts said she should do exactly that. Get down to his level, because that posture is, the experts said, less likely to be intimidating to your child. And that's correct, by the way. Scrunching down and grabbing your knees isn't intimidating at all. It's pleading. It's cajoling. It looks like the parent in question is one move away from being down on her knees asking the king for a favor. It immediately puts the child in a position of power in the relationship. Check it out. The parent is scrunched down with her hands on her knees. Who looks like the superior being here? That's right, the child. People in my generation almost universally report that one of the things they remember from their childhoods is their parents' occasional frequent use of "because I said so." They heard those 4 words because their parents did not give explanations for the instructions they gave or the decisions they made. Taking the example of the mother who wants her 5-year-old to pick up his toys and move them to another room, a mom of the 1950s would have simply said just that. "Billy, it's time for you to pick up these toys, move them to another room." And because children are hardwired to challenge authority, the child in that situation would have responded, as all children will, with "Why?" Remember, that's not a genuine request for information. It is a rebellious invitation to do battle. It is a challenge to a parent's authority. It's as if the child is telling his mother that if she does not justify her instruction to his satisfaction, his, mind you, he's not obligated to comply. That's how children think, by the way. They cannot explain how they think, but they're thinking, believe me. So a child in the 1950s or before would respond to a parental instruction with "Why?" And the old-fashioned parent would simply say, "Because I said so. That's why." And then this old-fashioned parent would turn around and walk away, leaving the child to, as it was put back then, stew in his own juices. According to the overwhelming majority, I'd say 99% of people in the mental health field today, "because I said so" is bad parenting. It's supposedly dictatorial, authoritarian, and disrespectful of a child's supposed right to know the explanation behind any given instruction. One expert even says that children have a right to know the explanation because they otherwise will never understand how adults make decisions. Really? My parents didn't explain themselves, yet I have a fairly long history of making reasonably good decisions. Another so-called expert says that a child who hears these supposedly damaging 4 words learns only that might makes right. He may obey the instruction in question, but he obeys only because he's afraid. Because he is being taught that being in charge is a matter of being the biggest wolf in the pack, this child will grow up to be an abuser. Folks, that is what the person in question actually says. This is the sort of hyperbolic nonsense that has proliferated in the mental health professional community since the late 1960s. Not one small shred of objective evidence exists that would support any of these sorts of apocalyptic contentions. Like so many things mental health professionals say, they are made up, snatched out of thin air, cut from whole cloth. The problem, and it's been a problem for nearly 50 years, is that people believe mental health professionals are giving good advice simply because they have capital letters after their names. If the reader has any qualms about "because I said so," keep in mind that people of my generation, when we were kids, were a whole lot happier than today's kids. We were less likely to become depressed, suffer debilitating anxiety, commit suicide, cut ourselves, deliberately hurt ourselves in some equally stupid and self-dramatic way, starve ourselves, and we left home earlier and more successfully than today's young people. All of the mental health statistics indicate beyond a shadow of doubt that we were happier, far more emotionally resilient, and far more well-adjusted. And we heard "because I said so" quite a lot. Why was that the case, that our mental health was so much better? I'll tell you. It's a very simple answer. Things were very clear to us. That's why. The foremost clear thing was that our parents were in complete charge of our families. That simplified our lives considerably. And believe me, and your own common sense, simplicity fosters happiness and a sense of well-being. Mind you, we did not like being told because I said so, but there's every bit of evidence that because it simplified our lives, it was good for us. No one my age has ever told me otherwise. So let's get one thing very clear. Because I said so is nothing but a self-affirmation of the legitimacy of your authority over your child. Your authority is legitimate for 3 reasons, the most significant of which is that God has assigned you that authority over your child. Your authority as a parent is natural and comes from the highest source, the Most High, in fact. The second reason your authority is legitimate is because you love your child unconditionally. You love your child so much that you'd be willing to sacrifice your life to save his. And the third reason your authority is legitimate is because you use a significant part of your earnings to support your child. Your provision and protection are essential to your child's well-being. Your child has done nothing to deserve your provision and protection. You give it freely out of love. For those reasons, you're not obligated to justify your child, any decision you make or instruction you issue. The same applies to business leaders, commanding officers in the armed forces, classroom teachers, judges, or anyone else who occupies a position of legitimate authority. No one who legally and ethically occupies a leadership position is obligated to justify his or her authority to the people he or she is leading. That's why it's understood, or should be, by a CEO's employees, a general's soldiers, a teacher's students, and the lawyers in a judge's courtroom that they must obey simply because the person in charge says so, not because he gives a good explanation. In the beginning of this video, I said children argue because first, parents doctor up instructions with explanations, and second, when children disagree with parental decisions, parents try to talk them into agreeing. In the example of the mother who wants her child to pick up and move his toys out of the living room, she's trying to get her child to say, "Stop right there, Mom. Okay, you've convinced me. Of course, this is the best room for you to meet with Mrs. Wilson, and it's a simple thing for me to move my toys, so, hey, I'm going to move my toys. No problem." Folks, that has never happened. Nothing even close to it has ever happened, right? The chance of getting a child to agree with a parental decision or instruction that he doesn't like in the first place is nil, zero, nada, zilch. It doesn't matter how clever, intelligent, or well-educated the parent may be. It would not matter that the parent was a trial attorney who had mastered the art of persuasive rhetoric. The child is not going to agree. Here's the rule, and there has never, ever, in the full span of human history, been an exception to it. When a child does not like a parent's decision or instruction, the child is not going to agree with the reason behind it. It is downright silly to think otherwise, much less make the attempt. Look, folks, arguing with a child is demeaning to the adult in question, and let me make myself perfectly clear. A parent is in total, complete, unequivocal control of whether an argument takes place or not between himself and his child. When a parent argues with a child, he or she stoops to the child's level, sometimes literally, in fact, gives the child power in the relationship, and all children do with such power is abuse it. And both parent and child, no matter the outcome, are worse off than would otherwise be the case. Yes, even when a child wins an argument with a parent, the child is worse off. Why? Because the only way a child wins an argument with a parent is for the parent to abdicate his or her natural God-given authority. And whether they realize it or not, and they don't, not consciously anyway, children need unequivocal parental authority as much as they need unconditional parental love. And while we're on the subject of winning arguments, let me make myself perfectly clear. Adults should not be trying to win arguments with children. They should not be having arguments with children in the first place. Okay, it's time for me to give you your next homework assignment. It comes in two parts. Part one's very simple. Stop explaining yourself to your kids. Simply make decisions, communicate them straightforwardly, as in, again, using the example at hand. Billy, I want you to pick up these toys and take them to your bedroom right now. I'll be back in a few minutes to make sure it's done. Short and sweet, as parents were once wont to do. That's the way to do it. Use few words. Come straight to the point. The more concise the instruction, the more clear the instruction, and the more concise and clear an instruction, the more likely it is to be obeyed. Keep that in mind because we're going to revisit that principle in an upcoming segment of this series. Part 2 of your homework assignment is to begin incorporating "because I said so" into your parenting vocabulary. That's right. When you make a decision or issue an instruction and your child reacts with "why" or "why not?" remember, those are not requests for information. They are invitations to do battle. Simply respond with 4 of the most powerful words ever strung together. Because I said so. And then walk away. There is no need, after all, to say anything more. Well, I hope you're already beginning to experience and enjoy the freedom that comes with truly effective parenting. It's a wonderful thing, isn't it? And keep in mind always that the more effective your parenting, the happier your child. At first, your child may not like the changes you're making in his or her life, but they are going to pay off richly for all of you, I guarantee. Okay. Practice the homework assignments, and when you feel you're ready, sign back on and go to the next video in the series. In the meantime, happy parenting to you. Ba-ba-boo-boo.